All right, welcome back to Ducks and Pucks. This is your host Mike Walters, along with my co-host Eddie Jones. We're going to be going over the games from last week and the ones coming up this week. And it's been kind of a crazy week, Eddie, with Perry out. You know, they found out that he and Beauchemin have the mumps, so they've been out. And the games, the way they've been going, we've been just almost going to overtime every single game, Eddie.
Yeah, and it gets it gets annoying after a while to watch that, and it wouldn't be as annoying if we actually won most of them. But our last 2 weeks of games have been really close, and the last 5 games have all gone into overtime or a shootout, and unfortunately we've lost 4 of those last 5. The only game that way back on the beginning of November, and November 2nd was the last game that didn't go to overtime for us. So 5 games in a row is a little bit too much to handle, but it's just we can't end up finishing it. That's a problem, and obviously we're missing 2 alternate captains in Perry and Beauchemin with the Mumps, and we've got a number of other guys out, which we'll talk about later, and even with secondary scoring coming from Kessler and guys like Silverberg and Vatanen this week, it seems like we're not putting enough goals in the back of the net, barring that game against LA at Honda Center. We're just not being able to score enough.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, that first game that we'll review is the Vancouver game, which I went to, which started out with a bang. You had Patrick Maroon dropping the gloves right off the face-off with Bieksa, and so I mean they were going at it. That was good, and there were some goals in the beginning of the second period only. You had Vatanen scoring and Alex Burrows scoring, but that was it for the whole game. You only had 2 goals. You had another fight, an interesting one with Josh Manson, where he was shaking his fists and he was really revved up, and that was that got the crowd going. So that was pretty fun. But from a scoring standpoint, it was just very very just there just wasn't a lot of chances in that game as far as like quality scoring chances. And it ended up going to overtime, and then went to shootout, and then as we know, Nick Bonino did us in the shootout, and we had a couple of chances though in that shootout. Kessler with his near miss there at the end, and we just couldn't get it done, Eddie. And like you said, we just weren't scoring any goals.
Yeah, and I think it was just we were unlucky in that game, really. They hit the post twice. Silverberg hits the post, then Kessler hits the post, and with the lack of chances, it was really because of how calm both the goalies were. Anderson had a great game, and so did Eddie Lack, and there wasn't much in the way of goal scoring chances other than Vatanen shot on the power play and Burrows getting his goal. And that's what we've kind of seen lately. When Anderson's on his game, we've come up against good goalies, and we just haven't been able to finish. And I think that's why we need a guy like Perry back, who's one of the top goal scorers in the league. We just need that instinct to put the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah, like you said, it was very unlucky. I mean, it was frustrating standing there watching the 2 shots go off the posts in the shootout, just to know that we were that close. But it's just like you said, it's just been tough scoring, going with Perry out, and then as we'll talk about some of the other players later in the show. And then we fast forward to Wednesday, and Wednesday was just one of the craziest games I've seen, Eddie. The Ducks pulling off that win, 6-5. I mean, it just was. I mean, there's so many things to talk about in this game, but the Ducks started out on fire, playing really well, controlling the pace, doing everything they needed to do, but they weren't getting it in the net. And then the Kings capitalized. Kopitar on the penalty shot, Drew Doughty with a point shot that looked like it might have been screened, and the Ducks got down 2-0, and then rallied, and then we're down 3-2 going in the third, and still were able to pull that game out, Eddie.
Yeah, and Stale coach of the Kings said after the game that the Kings didn't deserve to get anywhere close to winning that game, and I think he's right. I think this is reminiscent of last season, how we just fight to the end and get a result. But this was a game that should have gone heavily in favor of us, and with some poor goaltending in the beginning by Anderson and LaBarbera coming in and doing a decent job. But we outshot them 15-5 in the first period and 16-7 in the second period. And usually when you see that, you got to say that the score is usually going to be lopsided, but. By the end of the second period, we were still just hanging on. We were still losing 3-2. So, everybody was kind of surprised, and obviously on Twitter it was blowing up. Jonathan Quick was keeping him in the game, and Sutter reiterated that after the game that the only reason they were brought into the shootout was because of Jonathan Quick, and this showed that this is why we picked up Ryan Kessler as well for days like this or weeks like this when a guy like Perry or Getzlav is out of the lineup. He can be a bona fide number two and come in and have a great game like he did. He had 2 goals and assist, 8 hits. He was doing everything that game.
Yeah, what did you like about his play? I mean, obviously in the third period he had those two big goals, one to tie it up at 3-3, the other to bring the Ducks within one with just over 5 minutes to go. What did you see from him? Obviously he went beast mode and everything, but anything in particular that you liked, obviously besides the goal scoring?
Just his all around play that game. He was doing everything. He was trying to get his team into it. Timely goal scoring. He was hitting. Obviously, had 8 hits that game. He's been what we've been looking for the last, I don't know how many years we're looking for a number two to sit behind Getzlaff and just do everything. Obviously, we had Benino last year who did a lot, but Kessler just seems to do everything. And when he's on his game, he does everything right. So, shooting, hitting, skating, scoring, he was doing everything that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kessler is definitely, one of the most well-rounded centers, in the league, and he proved it on that night. Who else impressed me that came out was Silverberg. Getting his first goal of the year there, an assist. What did you see from Jacob?
He's shooting the puck with confidence. I think after scoring that goal, he had a pretty good game in the next game too against the Kings. That we lost in overtime. But he hasn't had a terrible season. He has 8 points, but he's mostly been picking up second assists and stuff. And after his hard start to the season last year, and then he kind of trailed off after the injury, we were hoping that he'd be able to put some more goals in the back. And then I'm hoping with this first one here, he'll be able to keep going. Obviously, he didn't score against the Kings on Saturday, but with the shot that he has, he could definitely, if he gets on a roll, put in 20, 25, 30 in a season.
Yeah, and if you noticed, he's been doing pretty good in the shootouts. Eddie, he had that goal in that game too to help the Ducks pull out that win.
Yeah, and it's because of his shot too. If you watch on most of his shootout attempts, he doesn't deke. He kind of just pulls it in and shoots it off the crossbar. And we saw him hit the post in one game, and he just has one of the quickest releases in the league. We heard about that in Ottawa, and we saw that early on in his career in Anaheim, and that's helping him in the shootout, and he has a great percentage. So even though we've lost most of our shootouts, he's been a guy out there, and he's pretty much scored on most of his opportunities or got close to scoring.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is, what did you think when Anderson got pulled after the third goal? Do you think that was the right call by Bruce, or do you think he should have let him fight through it? What do you think?
I think it was the right call. He led in 3 goals on 10 shots. His confidence was pretty much gone, and we needed a change. Obviously, you'd rather have a guy like Gibson there to come in, but when you led in 3 goals on 10 shots, that early, you don't really want to leave a guy like that out there, especially when we're dominating the play, and if his confidence is gone and he lets in another one, then that could ruin him for the next game's coming up. Just get him out there as early as possible. Maybe if it was 3 goals on 15, you leave him out there, but he'd only saved 7 shots, and there's already 3 goals down. So I think it was a good decision by Boudreau to put LaBarbera in.
Yeah, I agree. I think Anderson, I think the biggest issue was that last goal. I mean, by Lewis. The puck was waffling a little bit when it went towards Anderson, but it was a long shot. He wasn't screened, and looks like he just misjudged the puck, Eddie, on that play.
Yeah, and it was from really far out. When you watch it again, it was a really weak shot just under the arm. He kind of just missed. He just whiffed on it and didn't really get a good eye on it. He must have took his eye off the puck, but yeah, it wasn't his night, and he was showing that early on, but he came back and he bounced back in the next game, and he's done that so far in his young career. So I think it was the good decision, obviously, when you look at how well he played in LA on Saturday.
And then finally on that game, what about LaBarbera? He came in. Obviously, he gave up those 2 goals in the third period to Gabrick and Williams, but in the shootout, he stoned Carter, and then he went with the poke check, which we know is a risky move, but he went for that, surprised Kopitar, and basically saved the day for the Ducks.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like he looked pretty good coming in. LeBarber did, and obviously, like I said, it's not an ideal situation to have LeBarber come in instead of Gibson, but so far in the games he's played in, other barring the first game against Colorado, he's looked pretty good, and he's been a little bit weak in some areas, high glove and through the 5 hole, but and playing the puck especially, he hasn't looked so good playing the puck, but yeah, he's our third goalie. We're not expecting him to come in and get shutouts back to back every night against some of the top teams. We're just hoping he can come in and do a good job until Gibson comes back, and I think that's the main reason we picked him up in the offseason.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that he can, at least if he keeps performing the way he is doing for now, with obviously as we mentioned, Gibson's going to be out for at least another 2, 3, 4 weeks here with his groin injury. So I'm happy with that play, and I think the fans will be okay with that as well. And then we fast forward, to yesterday against the Kings again, Eddie. This time in Staples Center. Again, we ended up tied at the end, 2-2. Went to overtime. Lost on a questionable penalty call, which gave the Kings a power play. It looked like the Ducks, were going to be fine. Started out with Edom getting his second goal, getting rolling. Ducks had a little bit of a breakdown on their power play that led to the Toffoli goal. But then when Kessler answered right back, we were up 2-1 going to the third. I thought we were going to pull this one out, Eddie.
Yeah, and so did I. But you look at some of the goals they scored for the Kings, or at least the Toffoli goal, I think could have prevented it. It was a great shot, but it was shorthanded, and when you go into a game like against the Kings, you look at how many shorthanded goals Toffoli had going into the game. He already had 3. You would think when you're on the power play, you want to kind of tighten up when you see him on the ice and make sure you don't give away any chances to him. And of course, he comes in and he scores his 4th shorthanded goal of the season. And obviously the other 2 goals were on the power play, which and in overtime. I don't really want to talk about that one. I don't really think that was hooking on Lindholm. Maybe you see that get called in regulation, but in overtime when any call could finish the game as it did, you rarely see that get called. And maybe I'm a little bit biased, but looking at the call a couple times, I definitely didn't think it was hooking.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like there was no pull down on that play, and plus, a lot of fans we had been talking about during the game on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot. We were talking about the refs were pretty much letting the play go most of the game, and then to do that, 23 seconds into the overtime on, which looked like Kopitar, tripped on his own skates basically. Let's just call it what it is, and for them to do that. I think that's where the fans get frustrated too. Is the refs? It seemed like the first 2 periods let everything go. Then in the third period, they started calling a few things, and subsequently in the overtime as well, Eddie.
Yeah, and you look at the first goal too, with Getzlaf getting that goalie interference call. That's a little bit questionable as well. With the 2 calls that the Kings scored on in the power play, it's not. It's when you look at it as a fan, you're like, well, how come those 2 get called and then it comes back to hurt us, and especially in the overtime one for sure. Like you said, they were letting things go. There weren't really many penalties that game, and then you see 2 kind of questionable calls end up losing you the game. And after Anderson had such a good game, it's kind of tough to swallow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm glad we got the point, obviously, and I know a lot of fans are frustrated, but I mean, you have to look at it with the players that we have out, and yeah, the Ducks have been 3-0-4 in their last 7. But when you have, Perry out, Beauchemin out, Heatley out, now DSP was upper body injury, didn't play last night. I'm still happy with the level that the team's playing. If it takes a call like that for the Kings to win, then whatever. Good luck to them. So, that's all I can really say about it. I mean, at least we got that point out of it, Eddie.
Yeah, and I guess if you look back in the past 2 weeks, that's what you could really say is at least we got a point out of these games. But when you look at the last 5 games, and we lost 4 or 5 in a shootout or overtime, 2 in overtime and 2 in a shootout, we could use those extra 4 points maybe later on in the season or even right now. That would put us a lot farther into the lead, and we're looking for those secondary scoring to get in there. Obviously with Perry out, it's hard to say they've really played badly as a team when you have so many injuries. To still be leading in the Western Conference after losing 4 of your last 5 and having 8 guys out that are key starters, it's definitely a good position to be in.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that the big issue too, and I talked about this earlier, was basically the regulation wins. That's what's kind of hurting the Ducks right now because if you get in a situation late in the season and we end up tied with somebody for the division, and then we're going to look back at this stretch of 2 weeks where we could have won some more games in regulation and go, only if. So that's kind of the big thing I see, Eddie. That's kind of could come back to bite us in the end, maybe at the end of the season.
Yeah, and we looked last year, and we didn't have a ton of overtime losses, or we won most of our games in regulation, and that made a difference at the end of the season. And how many points we had, getting those extra points, and winning those games, and in the last few seconds, like I remember the game against Vancouver when Perry scored in the last few seconds of overtime to get the 2 points. And at the end of the season, no matter what position you're in, those points, extra points, are always going to make a difference. And it could be the difference of playing, San Jose or some of the Central teams with playing LA in the first round.
And going forward this week, today we've got the Florida Panthers visiting in town, and we're going to see a familiar face. It hasn't posted yet, but I'm thinking Luongo's going to be in net. Eddie, what should the Ducks expect? Against Florida, who hasn't been doing too fantastic this season.
Yeah, but I think if you look at Florida, and I think they're not a great team, but I think they're better than where they are. They've improved vastly on defense this year, and that's helped to Ekblad coming into the team and a lot of guys stepping up. They've only let in 35 goals all year, which is actually tied for first with Pittsburgh in the Eastern Conference. And that's not far off the league, best either. So they don't let in a lot of goals. The only problem is they've actually scored less goals than even Buffalo has. They've only scored 27 goals in the season, which is worse than the league. And you think a lot of teams go in here, and I definitely think this is going to be a low-scoring game with how we have scored lately, not being able to score a lot of goals. So I'm fearing another game where we end up going to overtime or a shootout, but I definitely hope not. But yeah, this is going to be a frustrating game. They kind of remind me of the New Jersey Devils of past years without the goal scoring talent. They just defend constantly, and there's not much you can do about it. So I think we got to get to them early, get their defense under pressure guys like Ekblad and Kulikov, and hopefully put a couple goals in early. So we because they're not going to score a ton either.
What do you think Kessler matching up against Luongo? They were teammates back in Vancouver. You think he might have some pointers, or he himself have some, tactics to throw some shots his way?
Yeah, but you could also say that the other way. Luongo could know exactly what Kessler's going to do. I don't think it really matters when you come in, when you face an old goalie. Neither one's going to have an advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be too much of an advantage for Kessler. I mean, maybe some motivation to put one behind, Luongo. But I agree with you. I'm afraid, I'll be heading to the game today. I'm afraid it's going to be a low scoring affair too. I'm just hoping, if it is, we pull out, 1-0, 2-1, whatever the case may be. Because all of us. Like we said, down a lot of people, but we want to start winning, getting some regulation wins, especially at home. As we're also going to host Calgary and Vancouver this week. Calgary is going to be an interesting game too. I wonder if Hiller is going to start in that game, Eddie.
I think they might start Hiller. He's been the hot hand this season. Kai Ramos started off really well, but he's kind of trailed off in the end. And much like I think we should get a win in the game against Florida, Calgary's actually been really good this season, and I think they've probably been next to Nashville, if not more of a surprise than Nashville at 11-6-2. You can't just roll into Calgary and expect to win now, and I think that's just because another surprise in Calgary being the top scoring team in the Western Conference with 59 goals. Their goal scoring, they've let in a lot of goals as well, but when you score 59 goals, it's going to be another game which I think is going to be close unless we maybe have Perry and Beauchemin back by then, I would hope. But yeah, they're not a team to take lightly this year. They've got a lot of depth and team scoring. There's a lot of guys throughout the lineup. There's no stars. Goudreau, Juris, Monahan, Raymond. A lot of guys are scoring this season, and there's not one guy like Perry or that is scoring for them. They've got a whole bunch of guys going. So if Hiller's in net, we all know that he can steal a game sometimes. So if he's in, like I said in the Florida game, we got to get to him early and put them behind, and then lock up defensively so they don't get some goals on us.
Yeah, looking at that lineup, you talk about it for Calgary. I mean, it's just amazing. You got 6 players on that team with 5 goals or more. I mean, it's a balanced team for sure. And I mean, even after that, you've still got on here, looking at all their stats, you've got another 5 or 6 guys that have 3 or 4 goals. So I mean, almost everybody on this lineup, Eddie, is multi points. Like you said, just goals and assists all over the place.
Yeah, and like I said, nobody really thought they would be fifth in the league and have the most goals scored at the start of the season. Everybody thought obviously their problems were defensively, and at least for scoring, they have probably the best defense pairing in the league right now with Giordano and Brody. I think Giordano is leading the league still in points for a defenseman, so their great start to the season has helped them, and I think just not being having a lot of offensive minded defensemen has hurt them a bit. And Brody and Weidman and Giordano, their defense is the only problem there, obviously, and their backup goalies and Ramo hasn't been too great. Hiller's had some nights where he hasn't been amazing, but this is not a team like last year to take lightly. We saw in the beginning of the season they struggled, but I remember the last game we played against at the end of the season, we got pretty much, I think it was 7-1. We got destroyed by them. So
Yep,
at the end of the season,
exactly.
they showed a fight that they've brought into this season and has actually started winning them games.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Hillers too, his numbers are pretty good. I mean, 2.3 goals against right now, 9.22 save percentage, 8-4-2, one overtime loss and one shootout loss, but not bad numbers. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be fun too later in the month because Calgary's going to come to the Honda Center too for that game, which I'll be at that one. So it'll be interesting to see, especially because my wife's a Hiller fan, even though, of course, she loves the Ducks, but she still likes Hiller. So it's going to be a fun time with this game and then the one coming up in a couple weeks, Eddie. And then we finish up with Vancouver towards the end of this week, another rematch. What do you think we can expect from this battle?
I think we expect a lot different than the last game we played against them. Obviously, we played against Lack, and everybody thought that was going to be, a little bit of a better chance to beat them with how well Miller's been playing. But obviously, Lack's he's one of those backup goalies where he can come in and look like a starter at times. So, but if we have Perry back and Beauchemin back, Smith Pelly back, a lot of our main, core starter guys back, I think we can pick up a win. But this isn't, as normally as you look last year, this isn't going to be an easy schedule. I would hope that we can get a win against this one, and considering how we played against Vancouver the last time, we can get more chances and again get to them early, because it seems when you get to some of these teams early, the teams that have let in a lot of goals, they end up not being able to come back. Vancouver's in the kind of the same boat as Calgary, as they've scored a lot of goals, but they've also let in 52, which is one of the worst in the Western Conference as well. So there's definitely, we want to get the first goal and then be up early and then get in Miller or Lack's head.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it's probably gonna be a physical battle too. I mean, like last time, Maroon dropped the gloves, Manson dropped the gloves. I don't know. You might even see Kessler drop the gloves. Who knows? Because it's going against his former team, and you still have the Sedins leading the way on the team this year. They're playing better than they did last year, and Bonino is obviously the third scoring point leader. So it's going to be a battle, Eddie. I think these 3 games this week. We always talk about it. We expect to win all, but I'm thinking this week we're probably going to take 2 out of 3, Eddie.
Yeah, I think so too. I know that we don't have any back-to-backs, which is definitely helpful. We have a day's rest between each game. I think coming into Florida tonight, I would hope that we'd bounce back and get a win. I think our only loss, unfortunately, if I think we end up losing to Calgary and then winning against Vancouver, I think Calgary is on a roll this year, and if we can't get to them early. If Philly ends up having a game, then we might end up losing. But there's no way that we can win 3 games. I think we can win 3 games this week, but if you're gonna look at it in a realistic standpoint and be safe about it, then 2 out of 3 would be good, as long as we just win some, not in overtime, and give these Western Conference teams like Vancouver and Calgary extra points, especially Vancouver, and especially because both of them are in the Pacific Division, and they're the closest teams to us, which is probably the most surprising thing to look at. Is you would normally expect LA and San Jose to be the closest teams to the Ducks, but it's actually Vancouver and Calgary who are our next 2 Pacific rivals, so this is a big week for us in the standings.
Oh yeah, like you said, we got to get regulation wins, and we don't want to, just get 1 point over a team. We want to get 2. And going through this week, who are your 3 stars for this week, Eddie?
I think everybody knows who the first star is going to be, and that's obviously Ryan Kessler. He stepped up in Perry's absence, and he had 3 goals and 2 assists. There's no question that he was our top performer this week, and he really spurred the team on to grab that win in LA, and maybe to get us even closer in the other games.
Oh yeah, I mean, with the way he played, for sure. I mean, he dominated, especially that third period in the first game against the Kings, and he played well in the last one as well. Who's the second star that you would put up there?
Sammy Botton, and he had a pretty good week. Just kind of quiet, I guess. I didn't really notice he had 4 points this week, had a goal and 3 assists, and he's been quietly going around his business, and he's been one of the if not the best defensemen from the Ducks this year, and obviously another power play goal and picking up three other assists on the way is a great week for him.
I agree. I mean, he's just been a machine on the power play, like you talked about. And he's been the most offensive defenseman for the Ducks so far this season. And who would you round out for the top 3 for the Ducks this week?
This was kind of hard because obviously we didn't have a great week, and there's a couple other guys who had picked up a goal and assist, like Silverberg, and a couple other guys who had some strong performances. Anderson barring the performance in the first game against LA, but the guy we went with this week was Getzlaf. He had a goal and assist, and he obviously had the game tying goal in the first game against LA, and he just looked like a leader this week. We needed that out there. He was pretty good on the face-offs. He got in on a lot of hits, played in the dirty areas, and obviously came up clutch with that tip in against LA.
Yeah, that goal with 1:39 left was, I mean, huge because the Ducks were down 2-0 early, then they're down 3-2, then they're down 5-3, and then when he scores at that point in time, we were only down by 5-4, and he ties it up at the very end. I mean, that was just a good game to show the Ducks that they weren't going to back down, because it can be frustrating, Eddie, too, if you start out hot like the Ducks did that game, give up 2 goals right away. And get down early after you've outplayed the other team. That's frustrating. It was good to see the Ducks come back and win that one.
Yeah, and when you have injuries to your other leaders in the locker room, this is when a guy like Getzlaf, who's your captain, needs to come through and spur your team on to victory after dominating the first 2 periods and still being down for both periods. He's got to come out and he's got to lead them to the win, and we saw that a lot last year, and we saw that definitely in this game, in the first game against the Kings, and he was great. Although only picking up two points throughout the year, he was great. In these weak games, being a leader. So.
All right, and then let's round this up with all the injury news. Where should we start? I guess, Eddie. I guess we can start off with injury/flu news, as I've been posting on the blog and Twitter and whatnot. I guess we can start out with Perry, and the latest on Perry is that and Beauchemin, they both had mumps. Looks like Perry was on IVs. He's in the hospital for a few days. He's out. He's skating. He's practicing. The latest, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to go tonight, but they're hoping that he'll be able to go on this road trip, Eddie.
Yeah, again, keyword is how many. Like, we've got a ton of injuries to go through with a lot of guys who are in starters. First line, top pairing D guys out. Beauchemin's out. Perry's out, and as you said, Beauchemin is definitely not going tonight, and looks like Perry might not be ready to go either. Obviously, coming off being on IVs, he's pretty weak, and he hasn't been able to participate in that many practices. I think it's maybe beneficial to keep him out for this game, and then bring him back for the games in Calgary and in Vancouver, and make sure he's got enough rest and we're not rushing him back. As for Beauchemin, I really hope we get him back too. We need I like how Manson has played, obviously, but Beauchemin he's a guy we need to have in the lineup by 75 games of the season if we're hoping to finish top of the Pacific Division. And we look at a lot of key other guys out of the lineup. We've got Gibson out for long term, which means LeBarbera is going to have to be the backup, and looks like he is most likely going to go tonight after Anderson starting the last few games. And as well, Heatley back in the IR with the same groin injury. I'm hoping this time they keep him out for the time he needs. He was obviously struggling when he came back, and I'm hoping that's because of his groin injury, not just because he's lost the ability to play well, but
Right.
we've also lost Smith Pelly, who looked really good, and he got the assist from the tip-in on Getzlaf in that game, and he throwing hits around like he's been doing all season. He's looked good so far, and luckily that's only a day-to-day injury. And then we've got two guys who are significant to the D pairing. Fisher comes in when necessary, and he's on an IR with upper body injury, and obviously Lovejoy is still out with a broken hand. So we got a lot of guys out of the lineup, and looks like the only guy making his way back soon would be Palmieri after coming back from a stint in Norfolk, looking a little bit rusty, but hopefully we have him back in the lineup sometime soon.
Yeah, I mean that's a mouthful right there that you ran through, but I mean, it's just crazy trying to keep all the updates. And yeah, Palmieri was the most recent one I heard that would come back. Though some of the sources told me in Norfolk that he looked really just kind of winded, not really 100%. But I mean that's kind of expected. He hasn't played since the playoffs last year, Eddie. So I'm not expecting him to come out and be 100% right away.
No, but he'll be a nice addition. We got a guy like Wagner in there right now, and obviously, we'd rather have a guy like Palmieri in there, even if he's looking a bit rusty. Get him some game time against some of these teams, and hopefully he can contribute to the secondary scoring too, because he's an important player on his team when he's at his best, and it's definitely nice to see him back and almost ready to go.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be a definite factor that's going to be added in, especially. I mean you could put him. I mean any of the lines, Eddie. I mean I don't think he would go on the first line, but he probably goes on the second or third line when he comes back.
Yeah, I think probably the third line because of Smith Pelly being out, or maybe even the first line if Perry's not back by the time Palmieri gets a try, because I think Boudreau is like this Bolesky, Silfverberg, Kessler line, and then maybe he swats in where Smith Pelly is until he comes back, or pops on that first line with maybe Edom and Getzlaf until Perry's back. So he could definitely move anywhere around the lineup.
Yeah, I mean he'll be a welcome addition, like you said, because we're down, wingers right now: Perry, Heatley, Devontae Smith, Pelly. I think going forward, some of maybe the final thoughts we can talk about here for the Ducks is going to be that secondary scoring, Eddie. That's where we're going to need Silverberg and Edom and guys like that to start picking up their game. I mean, they have picked it up in this last week, getting some goals and assists, but I think we're going to have to need even more because, like we said, these overtime, wins or losses, after a while, it's just going to be too many.
Yeah, and obviously with Perry out, our secondary scoring has to become our primary scoring. So I think when he comes back and Smith Pelly comes back, Heatley comes back, Palmieri comes back, that kind of establishes order in our lineup. We've got Perry is going to be the primary guy. Kessler and Silfverberg and Bolesky can continue to Kessler can continue to score. Bolesky's already got 7, so he's been our main contributor to our secondary scoring, and hopefully Silfverberg can pick it up after grabbing a goal this week, and then Palmieri can come in, Edom can continue scoring, DSP can contribute now and then, Heatley can pot some goals. I think we're going to be good. I just think we need to get everybody back in the lineup, and then we'll see it kind of gel together a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I think getting them, getting the line set and gelling together is going to be a factor, and obviously the injuries and getting more of the scoring going. So far, what have you seen that's impressed you about the team? Still getting points and being, the top 1, 2, or third team, depending on the way the points have been going in the whole league.
I think so far what's impressed me is what we were most concerned with at the start of the season is how is the defense going to hold up. Obviously, the first few games it looked really bad, and then they've kind of remedied their problems so far, and they haven't looked that bad. Maybe even in the game against LA where they let in 5 goals. I don't think it was the defense's problem. I think it was a bad game for both the goalies, and Just unlucky all around. But yeah, I definitely think the defense Fowler has been great. Defensively and offensively, Vatanen has been amazing. He's leading. I think he's leading the team in block shots. He's leading in points for defensemen. Beauchemin has been revitalized this season when he's been healthy. Lovejoy, Fistrick, even Allen, all of them have been sound defensively. So I think what's impressed me so far is how organized defensively we've been, considering our worries at the start of the season.
And in the league, any news that you want to share, Eddie? Anything on your mind?
No, after last week when we had that huge thing about the jersey advertising, there's not been much. There's a little bit of rumblings again about expansion and some owners in Las Vegas looking to build an arena and ready to invest in a team. But other than that, there hasn't been any league wise news other than the games that have been played recently.
Yeah, I actually just got an alert right now while we were talking, and it looks like the health of Gordie Howe has actually been declining. He had a severe stroke in October, and it looked like things were going to be maybe a little bit better, but he's not doing well. The latest report I got, so I just want to, from obviously you, me, and everybody here, just give wishes to him and his whole family, and hope that just the best, because it doesn't look good at this time, Eddie.
Yeah, and I know everybody wishes their sentiments to his family and everything, and everybody thought it was getting better, and with an update from you, it looks like his health is declining. So, hopefully he can turn it around, and my best wishes to him and his family.
Definitely, and this is going to wrap it up for this week. We have a special going on one of the shirts, the LA Dive shirt that pokes fun at the Kings. It's I posted it out there. It's going for $15 free shipping right now. So if anybody's interested, look that up or send us an email at DucksNPucks@usa.com and get your order in there. And we'll be back next week with more reviews and recaps and updates about your Ducks.
The Anaheim Ducks are the Stanley Cup champions.